Hi, welcome to another episode of the Paige Doodle Club. I'm Mike Paige, and today we're going to get back to basics and just doodle. So we're not drawing a specific thing today. It's just going to be putting pen to paper and making some designs. So grab some paper, a pen or a pencil, and follow along. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because in this one especially, there's no set answer of how the end is going to look. You're going to decide that. All right, so I'm going to start just filling the paper, and I'm going to make sort of a 1950s era boomerang design, and we're going to fill up the page with some boomerangs. So to start, I'll make the first one kind of vertically. I'm kind of making a curved letter A, almost like you're making a bubble letter A, and you want one side to be a little bit longer than the other side. And it's important as we're doing these 1950s type boomerangs, you don't want any hard angles. You want everything to have a nice curve to it. So then I'm going to connect these two ends here with a curving line like that. So you want the basic shape of a bubble letter A with a couple almost points to it, but they're rounded off. Then the secret to this is we're going to take that shape and we're going to change the angle every time we do it. So the next one, maybe I'll have the left side, or the top side in this case, be the longer side. And we're just going to keep rotating this shape. I'm figuring at the end of this, you'll have kind of like a coloring page that you've made, especially if you're doing it in pen. So we're just going to keep doing the same shape over and over. It'll become a little bit tedious, but I bet you'll have this shape nailed by the time you're done. And honestly, this kind of boring stuff like this, where it's repetition, is actually really good practice for your line work. So for example, the longer straight angles, the straight lines, you'll improve making a long straight line like that without picking your pencil or pen up and doing it in several lines. For me, when I'm making a long mark with a pen or pencil, I like to kind of anchor my wrist. That's my technique, and then I'm either slowly adjusting, kind of mostly with my middle finger controlling the pen, or I'm moving my wrist, but with the heel of my wrist kind of anchored to the paper. So we're just going to keep turning these boomerangs, and you can adjust whether it's the left or the right side that's going to be wider. You can also adjust how acute or obtuse the angle is. Those are words I haven't used since like 10th grade. If you're a mathematician, you probably use them a lot more than me. Or if you're an engineer. So we're just going to keep going. And essentially it's just the letter A over and over again. Hopefully by now you're getting the hang of it. If it's still a little tricky, the good news is you've still got more paper to practice on, and I bet you'll have it by the end. I thought it would be fun to do some more basic doodles for a few episodes where there is no right way to do it and wrong way to do it. Where it's more just about getting something onto the paper that wasn't there before you started. It's not necessarily how to draw a specific thing, it's just emphasizing the importance of creating something. And if you're like me, you might really like these 1950s era designs. I've always been a sucker for 1950s style. I think that was kind of the peak of American design, in my opinion. The cars, the movie posters, everything had a very specific look, and it's just the coolest to me. And you might disagree, that's fine. If you've filled up a good chunk of your paper with these boomerangs and you want to change shape, it's your coloring page. Go ahead. I'm actually going to start shifting into rectangles in just a minute. But because I'm making these rounded boomerangs right here, I won't do just regular rectangles. I'll have those rounded as well. So as I start shifting into rectangles, because I did the 50s style boomerangs, I'm going to want sort of the 1950s style rectangle designs as well. If you're doing this vertically, it's kind of tricky compared to doing it on a flat surface, just because your shoulder is kind of involved in making the long lines as well. And you're controlling your pen a little bit differently than you would be on a flat surface. So just like the boomerangs, all these rectangles, I'm just varying how wide they are, whether they're arranged vertically or horizontally. Some of them I'm going to have overlap into the boomerangs a little bit. If I was coloring these in, I might actually use colored pencil for something like this, so that you can build up color layers. So for example, if this rectangle was orange and this was blue, then in here I would have the overlap of those. And if every rectangle, you'd want to be coloring them in lightly if you're doing that. But as you start to overlap colors, it would be pretty cool. So there's my suggestion. You can take it or leave it. It's your coloring page. And if you're feeling like you might want to change shapes again, go for it. Maybe I'll switch to ovals in a minute. I'm kind of taking my time with these to try to keep relatively straight lines here. If you're an 8-year-old watching this, you've probably already filled your whole page and you're like, why is this guy so slow? And that's cool. I can be slower than you, that's fine. If you're a 40-year-old, you might be watching this and saying, why is this guy slow? And that's cool. I like to take my time on things. Most times when I'm sitting down to draw, that one's kind of wonky, whoops. Most times when I'm sitting down to draw something, for me, it's usually more about the process than the finished result. That's not the case if I'm doing a commission for somebody, then it's about the finished result. But if I'm sitting down to draw on my own, it's rare that I care about how it comes out. I usually just want to enjoy myself for a little while and maybe relieve some stress. And this is the way that I like to do it, putting pen to paper. I'm going to switch over to some ovals now. And just like the rectangles and the boomerangs, I'm going to adjust the angle as I go, and I'll make sure they're all overlapping a bit. And I'm going to vary the size as well. Maybe we'll do a couple that are like perfectly vertical and perfectly sideways. If you're like me, you're probably thinking that these ovals are a lot less interesting than the rectangles and boomerangs. If that's what you're thinking right now, switch to something else. Maybe you want to try, if you're trying stars, I wouldn't recommend doing the typical like all in one line star. If you're doing stars, I would say actually draw the outline, kind of like that. And again, just keep changing the angle of them. Boy, I said if you're drawing stars, and now I'm drawing stars. Thanks for nothing. Look what you made me do. I switched. All right, so the stars are going to be kind of tricky to be overlapping each other and not lose track of where you are. And some of them will be kind of wonky, like that last one was. As you change the angle that you're drawing it at, might get a little tricky. It's also hard to change the angle of a star because there's 5 points on it, and somehow they all end up looking like they're going the same way. Okay, so that's what, 3, 4, 7 stars. And I'm going to switch back to something else. Maybe I'll do a few more boomerangs and try to tie these all together here. And as you change the angle, it's also good to kind of change the size that you're doing. But basically all of the shapes that we've done so far, let's see, we've done 4 shapes and they're all just very rounded. There's no hard angles at all in any of what we've done so far. And if you've got some other shapes that you want to throw in there, go for it. I can't see what you're doing unless you want to send it in with the hashtag Mike Paige Doodle Club or hashtag Medfield TV. We love seeing the finished drawings. If you're particularly proud of yours, send it in. If you're a kid, ask your parents to send it in. We'd love to see it. What I haven't had yet is someone who's not proud of theirs send it in. Those might be fun to see too. But send in your work. All right, so maybe we'll stop there. If you have markers or crayons, colored pencils, you could even try watercolors with it. Go ahead and fill it in. Take some stress off. Get it filled in. Make it real colorful. And again, if you're using colored pencils or watercolors, you'd be able to go over the colors. If you're doing it with watercolors, you'll want the colors to dry before going to the next one. Colored pencils would be the easiest option for doing that. And again, just color fairly lightly. You don't need to try to kill the paper. I always tell kids when I'm teaching kids, almost like if you're trying to do stuff really lightly and you tend to push down really hard, best trick is hold it further back, because it's harder to press down hard if you're holding the pencil further back, and do it really light, almost like you're trying to tickle the paper is what I always tell them, where you're just barely pushing down, almost like you're doing the rubber pencil trick. You'll have a much easier time coloring lightly. Thanks for watching another episode of the Mike Paige Doodle Club. I hope you enjoyed taking some time out of your day to kill some stress and just put something on paper that wasn't already there. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next time.